Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Engineers podcast. Today I'm joined by someone who's a bit of a gem, Russ at LiveKit, and they're at a really fascinating intersection of infrastructure and AI, especially where real-time low latency communication via LiveKit and WebRTC meets conversational AI models like OpenAI's. We're going to go into Russ's background. We're going to talk about the origin of LiveKit and how they came to be, and also the paradigm shifts and where AI is creating opportunities for engineers and entrepreneurs. And of course, voice and AI is going to be encompassing this conversation. So, Russ, thanks for coming to join us.
Thanks so much for having me, Elliot. And thanks for calling me a gem. I appreciate that.
um, Give us a bit of an intro into your background. Offline, I said it's colorful. You've got a load of personality on your LinkedIn. Before we go into LiveKit, tell us about Russ.
Yeah, sure. I would say that my LinkedIn doesn't necessarily, my LinkedIn has personality. It's more like my personality has come out on LinkedIn. I keep it inside in most other social channels. But LinkedIn is a chance for me to reflect on my colorful, interesting career. My dad was in tech startups in like the 80s and 90s. I have a long, interesting story about that. But I think the biggest learning from him when I was growing up, he very quick aside there is he shared a cube with this person in Canada, in Toronto, and he was working with this guy in this cube, and they were working on kind of like early computers where the full system was on a chip, and they were specifically working on graphics, computer graphics at that time, and chips for this board they were working on, or this computer. And his friend said, "Hey, I'm working on a side project that I think I'm going to start a company around." With my dad in the basement. My dad, my uncle were like working on this idea. I want you to come and start it with me. And my dad's like, "Well, I don't know. I just had my son, my first son, which is me, and I'm not sure if I can go and do that." And he's like, "Well, just come check it out. Come to the basement, check it out." So he goes and he sees what they're working on there, and he says, "Yeah, we're going to call this a graphics accelerator, and it's going to plug into a slot on your computer, and we're going to onboard like or offboard all of like the graphics processing to this card." And he's like, or this chip, and he's like, "You should come start this with me. I really want you to join us. It's like a family affair we're doing here, and you're practically family. You know, we share a cube for so many years." And my dad turned it down because I was just born and I was a year old. But that company became ATI, which is the Radeon division of AMD now. And
Wow.
sometimes with all this AI stuff that's happening, I talk to him and I'm like, "Hey, man, like you
Yeah,
were
you
right
missed it.
there. Like you were
Yeah,
right there." And like
exactly.
all
Yeah.
he had a lot of friends that went to 3DFX and to NVIDIA and stuff like that. And it's just kind of crazy where it's all gone in that
Yeah.
time. But one of the things I said to him early on in my career was like, I think I was a college kid, and I was like, "Dad, why did you turn that thing down?" And he's like, "Well, I had other
Life
responsibilities,
circumstance.
but
Yeah.
also like," he's like, "Remember, hindsight is always 2020." And so he's like, "I worked hard so that you can take these risks that I couldn't take, and so take the risks." And that kind of informs my entire career. Really, bringing it all back to my background is. Um, I've had these amazing parents who just kind of encouraged me to become an entrepreneur um, from a young age, and so I've kind of I was an early YC founder in 2007 in the fifth batch of YC, and then that company failed, and then I joined a company, and then I worked that company was 23andMe in the early days, and I got to learn a lot about an area that I didn't know anything about. I'd never taken a biology class before, so I had a crash course in kind of genomics and biology and chemistry a little bit there, and then I left and I tried starting a company that isn't on my LinkedIn. Too short of a stint to put on the LinkedIn, and then I joined Twitter as an early engineer, and I've kind of oscillated between starting a company and then joining a company and starting a company and joining a company. And I think doing it that way, I think when you start to work on a company, you kind of get tunnel vision and you stop looking around at what's happening in the world and you really get focused on a specific problem. And so for me, I think like joining a company is a way for me to take a little bit of a breather or see what kinds of problems that other companies are having, um, at a different level of scale than I might have experienced when I was starting my small company. And so I think it gives me a lot of perspective to kind of join a company. And I think people sometimes, I don't know, I think like being a joiner versus a starter is somehow stigmatized in some ways, like at least in entrepreneurial circles. And but I think it's a really great way of kind of giving you some food for thought and helping seed your next startup idea.
Yeah, I think it's. Thank you for sharing that as well. I knew a name or some kind of drop was going to come.
Oh, I got more if you want, but
Yeah, no, I bet you do.
uh,
Um, but no, I totally agree. Like stepping out of entrepreneurship for a second and seeing how other people approach problems, younger, older, it doesn't matter, because I feel like, especially with AI, everyone's doing things differently at the moment. And it would even be a great opportunity to go and see how the next AI native business are
yeah,
solving problems
yeah,
because of a mindset thing. So I like the idea around founder, joiner, starter, joiner.
yeah,
Good for you.
yeah. It's been fun. It's been fun.
Tell
Um,
us about LiveKit, latest venture. Talk to
yeah.
us about that, the origin. I love.
So LiveKit, it kind of ties even back to my entrepreneurial kind of journey and the different companies I've started. I've always known this before I even started my first company in YC, but for some reason, I just wanted to be a founder so bad that 4 companies in a row I started because I just wanted to start a company. I didn't really have an idea at the time that I started the company of what I wanted. Why was I even starting this company? And so I'd always told myself that's like the wrong way to do it. At least for me, that's the wrong way to do it. The right way to do it is to have some goal that you're trying to accomplish, or mission or purpose, and then find other people that also like have that same mission or purpose or have alignment with you that want to come and help you do it. And a company is really just a structure to group together people with a shared purpose or a common mission. And so LiveKit was the first time that I'd started something that was kind of in this direction of it organically became a company. It wasn't originally meant to be a company. Um, it was during the pandemic, and I had just sold my previous company by sheer luck to Medium, the blogging platform, and I started to work on a side project that was right when the pandemic hit. So pandemic hits, we're all at home, stuck, can't leave our house, and we're connecting through the internet. And I was working on a side project that meant to connect people, kind of like there's a long story behind it, but like it's Clubhouse was this big thing and this phenomenon very early in the pandemic, and I wanted a kind of a version of Clubhouse, but I wanted to use that with my coworkers at Medium. And so I decided to prototype that and build a version of Clubhouse, but for companies to use and specifically for Medium to use. Um, and I started to use or look for real time audio and video infrastructure that I could use to support this kind of Clubhouse for companies concept. And it turned out that in open source, there were no like projects that were dedicated to providing infrastructure to solve this problem. There were applications, of course, like, I mean, we all used Zoom, and Zoom has a lot of this technology underneath that you need to be able to connect people instantly over the internet. But in the open source world, there just really wasn't anything that was general purpose that I could use for my application that I wanted to build. And so what we started to do, my co-founder and I, or he was just my friend, and then he became my co-founder of LiveKit. This is before LiveKit was a company, but he was help. We were working together to build infrastructure for my side project that could connect people instantly over the internet and all the technology underneath that enables that. And um, eventually, we kind of got bored of the side project, the Clubhouse for Medium project.
Back
But
to
we were
Russ's
really,
roots. He's like, I'm
yeah,
founding
but
a company. I'm going
yeah,
for this.
yeah. So, and then but we were really interested in the infrastructure. And so we said, oh, well, you know what? Like, we've been engineers for 20 years. Why don't we pay it forward and like actually just make this infrastructure available to everybody so that they can use it in their applications? If we're not going to use it in ours, maybe somebody else can find some use for it. And so we put it out, we called it LiveKit, and it kind of just blew up because I think the pandemic, everybody was suddenly rushing to integrate real time audio and video into their applications because suddenly you needed to be able to connect humans over the internet to one another, no matter where they were. And so it blew up and got really popular. And we had real companies, Reddit and Spotify and Oracle and all these large companies that had started to deploy it and play around with it internally. And we said, wow, it's kind of weird. Like, why? There are commercial offerings out there. There's Twilio out there. Like, why are you, big company, using this open source project with just three people attached to it? And so we had these conversations with them, and they said, well, you know, um, we want to be able to control the infrastructure. We love that it's open source. Um, and while we don't really want to deploy and scale it ourselves. We wish you had a cloud solution for that. Like, can you build a commercial offering? We're happy to pay you. We like that if we want to take the infrastructure and deploy it ourselves and take the code and implement custom things, that we can do that. That's not something that's possible with the commercial providers out there like Twilio. And so we said to ourselves, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Like, these large companies are using it and they're asking us for a paid product. Um, Maybe if we go and we build a paid product, then we can continue to work on this infrastructure for the long run, right? Like, we have a sustainable path now to continue working on it. And so that's the moment where we said, okay, well, okay, I guess we'll incorporate, and we'll probably need to raise some money because the infrastructure is actually quite complicated to build. Um, and especially like the massive scalable version of this. And so we raised a round and we started to build a team. And we had some early design partners that were really interesting, like Spotify. This massive company is like an early design partner, and so that's kind of how the whole thing started going, was to build kind of highly scalable software or plumbing that made it possible for you to connect any number of humans to any number of humans anywhere in the world with the lowest latency possible, right? Like 100 milliseconds or less of latency.
Love it. And walk us to where you are today. Like, when
Yeah.
you and I were first connected, I was
Yeah.
like, really? Like, this? Like, what an opportunity to find yourself just in the moment at this just complete paradigm shift of where we are with AI, and you've just landed in an incredible spot. Talk to us about where you are today.
Yeah. So it's been a really wild journey ever since that kind of moment that I just cut off at, like, where it turned into a company. Um, Very quickly out of the gate, we had all kinds of video conferencing, live streaming companies, um, live shopping with Whatnot, or live concerts with Spotify, and video conferencing applications too from large companies. And uh, so very quickly, we had a lot of big customers that were using us for video conferencing and live streaming applications. And we really thought of ourselves as infrastructure for video conferencing and live streaming. And then also on the fringe, robotics. We had quite a few robotics applications that were using us, some other futuristic ones too, like 3 weeks after our open source launch, this company started to go and deploy us in 911 dispatch centers, emergency dispatch centers in the US. And today we actually power 25% of 911 in the US. And that was kind of like a futuristic use case, right? Where 911 had never had the ability to get a video stream into the dispatch center so that the dispatch agent could see you and your situation and the emergency as it was unfolding. And so early on, we certainly had like these robotics use cases. Skydio built like a whole drone teleop system for police precincts, like a command center where they could control these drones and the way that they see where the drones are flying and control them. All uses LiveKit underneath. But um, I'm giving this talk in a couple of weeks. Um, it's a very quick 10-minute talk at the Web Summit in Vancouver, and the talk is titled the accidental AI company. They call ChatGPT or they call OpenAI the accidental consumer company, or um, Ben Thompson at Stratechery calls them that. But for us, I feel like we were the accidental AI company. And this is fast forwarding, a couple of years now to present day, or call it like a year and a half ago is when the moment it really started. I had built a demo at the start of 2023 that used LiveKit's infrastructure and ChatGPT to be able to allow someone to talk to ChatGPT instead of text with it, right? You suddenly had this app that like can convincingly sound like a human being, right? Or text with you like a human being. And I was like, I want to talk to it. Like that just seems way more natural, right? If it sounds like a human being, it'd be sweet to talk to. So I built this demo. They used LiveKit's infra. And then 5 months later, OpenAI ended up finding it. And they wanted to build a voice interface to ChatGPT called Voice Mode. And they had some internal prototypes and they found my demo, and they actually thought that the performance, the latency of that demo um, was better than anything they'd seen, including their internal prototypes. And so they said, this LiveKit platform's kind of interesting. Like, I wrote a blog post about how we did it. And so they, signed up for LiveKit Cloud. We didn't know at the time. They signed up with a personal Gmail address. and, and they started to build this proof of concept for voice mode on top of LiveKit Cloud. And after a few weeks, they'd become fans of the platform, and they like significantly de-risked building this voice interface to ChatGPT in the app. And so then we started to talk to them, and started a commercial relationship, and that's been going on kind of ever since. GPT, and I think I had this realization at that moment for the original voice mode, of what this company could become, what LiveKit could become, and the role it could play in the future of computing. And I'll get to what that is in a moment. But I think for the rest of the world, that moment or that realization of where computing is going, that happened in May of the next year. So I think May 2024, when the GPT 4.0 demo happened. And LiveKit actually powered every part of the GPT 4.0 demo. Everything you saw, we were the backbone network that was transporting all of that information, right? But what Mira and the team showed at that time was there is this computer that you can actually like convincingly talk to, that can express itself with the range of human emotions, right? That are embedded within voice, and it can like understand your tone and paralinguistic cues and things like that are just inherently present in the way you communicate with another human being. Only now you're doing that with a computer. And so I kind of, 2024 is when that demo happened. 40 years ago, down the street from my parents' house in Cupertino, there's this community college called De Anza College, and I've taken summer school there, summer classes, and all of that stuff. And in 1984, Steve Jobs was on stage at De Anza College with the Macintosh computer, under like a sheet, and he like takes it off and turns it on, and it speaks. It says like, "Hello, I am Macintosh," and it says like this whole thing. Um, and I think like people in sci-fi writers have been dreaming about kind of this anthropomorphized computer for a long time. And then, of course, I think in 1984, when Steve unveiled it, it was not a great, the technology at the time couldn't do what we can do now. But I think that like that was a display that was kind of telegraphing where things were going to go. And I feel in 2024, when OpenAI kind of unveiled advanced voice mode, or GPT 4.0, the model, um, that was like our generation's version of that 1984 Macintosh unveil, where suddenly the the future of computing became crystal clear. This is now possible, that when you make an AI model as smart as, can respond like, behaves like, thinks like a human being, the way that you are going to interact with that computer is going to be much more like the way that human beings interact with each other. And so that doesn't mean, it means you no longer have to use a mouse and a keyboard. You can now use your natural human inputs and outputs, which is vision and voice, and speech. And kind of, so I say we're the accidental AI company. It turns out that like the technology that you use to connect humans to other humans can now be used to connect humans to computers. And so the line I've used in other places a lot is, but it's a great line, but not trying to compliment myself. But yeah, if the foundational model companies are building the brain, then LiveKit has an opportunity to build a nervous system that carries the signals to and from that brain. And so, we built that network. We were already operating the network at scale for video conferencing and live streaming use cases. But all of a sudden now we were also operating the network for voice AI and computer vision based AI use cases. And ChatGPT being the first one really that came in, but now for character AI. And a lot of the large AI labs use it. I can't say their names, but you can figure it out. And so yeah, and then there's a lot of smaller startups that are using it too, because one of the things that we realized very early on when we were working with OpenAI was that, okay, well, where's the first place that we're going to see voice AI kind of have like a very high penetration? Yes, it's going to be in voice assistants that like people use on their phones and personal devices. Yes, it's going to be in like the Siris and Alexas of the future. Those like home devices like on countertops and things. But there's another system where that is very fragmented, that is still used at scale today all around the world, and that's a telephone. And for a lot of business processes, they involve someone picking up a phone and dialing a number, and you talk to either like an automated system that asks you to punch in keys, or you talk to a human being on the other end. Um, and in those scenarios, like there are many startups that are going and like automating those kinds of workflows using AI that you can speak to over a telephone, and the telephone is voice in and voice out. That's the primary input into that system, and so we started to work on a telephony stack that made it easy for developers to build those kinds of applications, right? Where you could put an AI on one end, and you could have that AI either call out or have the human call in to the AI and have a conversation over the phone using LiveKit's infrastructure. And so yeah, and over time, I guess, like to really round out the complete answer, over time, when we started to work with OpenAI, we noticed like we worked closely with them, so we saw what they were kind of building with voice mode and advanced voice mode. And so we built a general purpose framework that mirrors kind of what they were doing, so that all kinds of developers out there for different applications could also build these kinds of voice agents. And so we put out the framework that allows you, kind of what I call our version of Next.js. We put out our kind of agent framework that allows you to build these voice and video native AI applications. And that agent that you build using it connects to our transport network. But there are some gaps too, like in our product offering that we're starting to fill out. And so one gap is, well, I built this agent using your framework. How do I actually deploy this agent everywhere and auto scale it up and scale it down on demand, and restart it if it fails, and transfer the context over if it fails, and kind of providing reliability there. And so we're working on this cloud agents product that is our hosting product. Think of it as like our Vercel to our Next.js. And then the last piece that I think is missing here, or glaring gap, um, is evals and simulations. Like when you deploy your agents and they're running and they're talking to users, and then you want to make an update, how do you know that like there hasn't been a regression, or that they're not hallucinating, or that they're actually going through these workflows properly, and that and efficiently, in the way that they go about executing these workflows with users? And you just need like full on observability uh, and telemetry over these systems, and that's something that we don't provide today. And so I think that over time, what you're seeing us evolve into is a company that builds infrastructure for AI applications, focused on voice and video, but across all of the pillars of computing. So storage, in observability, recording, and telemetry and analytics, in compute, in hosting these agents, spinning them up all over the world, auto scaling them up and down, et cetera. And then network, which is being able to transport the audio and video anywhere in the world with as low latency as possible between the user and the computer. And so storage, network, compute, those are the three primitives of computing. Thus, I kind of joke that we're building AIWS. We're building a AI native cloud provider.
When we first met, yeah, I could quite clearly see your vision, just how you laid it out, and you walked me through the same steps as what we've just spoken about here on the podcast. Of we've come from web native to AI native to this is where we're placing bets on the future, like almost building this nervous system. And I think we're seeing like an evolution and a change in where people on a day to day basis are using AI. And I can really see your vision unfolding. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if I can see it unfolding.
I'm really glad that when we spoke earlier, that it was consistent with what I told you in the steps, because I didn't memorize it. so so
Exactly.
I'm doing a good job
Yeah.
at sticking to my talking points. But no, I think that there's a why that I think sometimes I talk to folks about, like, why are we working on this project? Like, what you know uh, I had a I I had the privilege of I had the privilege of having a meal or meeting. I had lunch with a group, but also Al Gore was at this lunch, and he coined the information superhighway, and some people joke that he invented the internet. But this question came up of like, what is LiveKit? Well, what do you guys do? And and I feel like there's enough distance now between us and the Silicon Valley TV show that HBO did, that I can say this. But what we're really doing is we're building a new internet. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think I can explain it in like a very short phrase. Um, when you go into the browser and you type in HTTP, right? What you're typing in is, you're typing in the protocol for how information is transferred between computers, which is what the internet is. It's an interlinking of computers all over the world. And so when you type in HTTP, you're typing in hypertext transfer protocol. But for voice AI and video AI applications, they don't transfer, or they mainly don't transfer text. They transfer audio and video. And that protocol is not hyper audio transfer protocol or hyper video transfer protocol. The reason we're building a new internet is because for this future of computing that is coming, where you're interacting with AI using voice and vision and speech, the protocols underneath that power most of the internet were not designed for that future. This is a complete paradigm shift in all of computing. And so it necessitates new infrastructure to support that paradigm shift. And that's really what we're doing, is we are building all of the infrastructure around that LLM that supports applications that are built on top of those LLMs.
Where are you and your team seeing some of the engineering challenges in this paradigm shift? Like we've spoken about a fantastic journey moving, even LiveKit as a business, moving from being web native and Reddit, Oracle, and building services for them through to OpenAI and other labs. Like, where are you seeing your engineering challenges shift from and to?
So I think that there's like two parts to the answer. I'd say the first part of the answer is that we're not actually seeing much of a shift in some part of our stack, right? So LiveKit was built to connect humans to other humans, right? Anywhere in the world instantly. You can really generalize that to connecting humans to not just humans, but machines as well, right? If the machine is becoming more human like, right, in its behavior and how it interacts with you, you can kind of take the same fundamental technology, except wire it up to a computer program on the other end instead of a human manipulating a computer on the other end. And so, in that sense, the infrastructure challenges that we've had to solve and we're still solving today, right? More and more data centers all around the world, more and more kind of like solving different kinds of networking problems. The internet, uh, it's hard to really grasp unless you kind of go super deep on it. Just how amazing it is that the internet works in the first place. Um, it's just crazy mess of wires and routers all around the world. I sometimes equate it to the road system of the world, right? Like there's bridges and potholes and ditches and highways and residential streets and all of that stuff, roundabouts, like in England, right? And people here don't know how to deal with roundabouts. I can tell you that for sure because we have like one or two, somewhere around here, and it's always definitely
I know
a
firsthand.
difficulty.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that's what the internet is like, and so moving packets instead of moving vehicles, moving packets from one place to another is actually quite complicated, and there's different kinds of roads or wires or network conditions you have to navigate and understand and figure out how to identify problems when they're happening in real time and route around those issues or take another path, right? Like sometimes I'll use this analogy that one of the systems that we've built on the back end is Google Maps, but for navigating the internet, right? For packets, instead of for cars on streets. And so that problem is the same, right? We're still working on that problem, and it's a really difficult one to solve it well for everyone in the world, and at the scale of kind of billions and billions of people. And we're pretty far along that path and that journey, but there's still more work to do. But the challenge fundamentally is roughly the same as it was before we kind of became an AI infrastructure company. So that part stayed the same. The part that I think is different, though, is there are new and complex challenges with this focus on making a computer feel more human to use, right? Giving the computer or imbuing the computer with similar abilities or capabilities that a human has, right? It can see the world, it can hear the world, it can interact with you using its voice. And in that domain, there's new technology and new kind of problems that we've had to go and figure out how to solve. And I'm not saying we've solved them yet. We're still in the process of solving them, right? And so I mentioned some of these earlier, which is like, well, when you're interacting with a voice agent, that's like a stateful process. It's not stateless like a web application. So in a web application, you make a request and you establish a connection just in time to the backend. You send your data to the backend, you wait there, your backend computes, and then derives a result, and then that result is sent back over the wires to the user, and then you terminate the connection, right? But when we're talking right now, like this is a real time stateful interaction where all the words that I'm saying are being processed by your brain in one part, and you're also doing some other processing on the back end, right, with your quote GPU, where you're taking those words I'm saying, integrating them into your knowledge base, and you're using that to figure out okay, when is it my turn to speak? When is Russ done blabbering? What am I going to say? How am I going to respond? What's the next question to ask? So this is like a stateful process. You can't multitask this. Like you can't, record two of these podcasts at the same time, right? Not very effectively unless you have an AI clone that's doing the other one. And so that is just fundamentally a different architecture. And we've had to start solving problems for that new architecture. So it's like, well, on the hosting side, like how do I actually like load balance and scale agents that are stateful? It's not like I can take one web server and just like, do thousands of requests a second on this web server. Like every single agent server is dedicated to one session. And so how do you actually load balance that across, many, many thousands of users around the world? That's one problem that we've, had to solve and are still solving. Another one that I think is interesting is turn detection. Like, how do you know? How does a computer know that you're done speaking, and that it can like start speaking? Or how does the computer know that it can interrupt you, or can it interrupt you with its thoughts? All of that kind of like back and forth between humans that we kind of take for granted. Like humans are really, really good at doing this. Um, and even though we're really good at doing it, we don't get it right all the time either. How do you provide that kind of like signal or understanding to an AI model? It's not, it's pretty, it's complicated because it's not as simple as just waiting for a pause.
Yeah, you're right. They're
I
really,
just pause. I just
yeah,
pause right now. It's interesting, right? I was like,
yeah,
I was kind of testing you. I'm like,
yeah. I know you
is he
were.
going to think
I
I'm
could
done or
see it
not?
in
Yeah.
your eyes. I realised
Yeah.
after a second. They're
Yeah.
really like emotionally nuanced things that I think we as humans we learn. Ironically, we learn over periods of time
Yes.
that they're probably very challenging, complex things to solve.
They really are, and in some ways, I don't know if we know how to solve some of these problems perfectly yet either, right? Like I think turn detection is still an area that even the largest AI labs in the world, OpenAI is working on these problems too. And we trained a transformer model internally, like we never trained models before, and so we trained our own model that does a semantic end of turn detection based on uh, your conversation history and what you've said in the past and what you just said. And that was a really interesting foray for us. Like now, all of a sudden, like we're training models, and so that's a new challenge, right? Like how do we do that and scale it up and build a roadmap out for like the types of models that we're going to train? Generally, small ones. We haven't raised $50 million dedicated to just training models and running on GPUs. So we're not doing any of that stuff. We're not going to do any of the LLMs anytime soon. But kind of these smaller models that can add value in places and really I think like for voice AI to go mainstream and be everywhere, you really need to solve the problem of turn detection. I think that that's one of the biggest ones is like, depending on the context, am I ordering food or am I doing patient intake at a hospital or am I interacting with my digital assistant at home, et cetera? The way that to do proper turn detection and kind of for those systems to feel very kind of human level conversational, the it's different every time. Like an interview is different from like just shooting the breeze with like your companion or your friend. And so how do you actually get those interactions right, I think is another big area that we've been spending some time in and trying to make that easier for developers who are building any number of these different applications.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Like thinking about it in real life situations for voice interaction, we're going to need turn
Yeah,
detection.
and then I think the last one that is really important, and I mentioned it earlier, is like evals. Like how I there's there's a big concern, generally speaking, about AI and AI hallucinating and AI doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, or AI safety is a component of this, and so how and what's interesting about voice versus text is like text, computers can read text. Like these are just strings of characters, and you can write assertions about strings of characters. But when it's voice and when it's computer vision, like how do you know, or even on the video generation side, like how do you know what these models are generating or what they're thinking and what they're going to put in front of a person or what they're going to say? Um, it's it's one of these things where when you make the argument of like, oh, well, maybe we'll have like statistical confidence. It's like, okay, well, to what degree do you have statistical confidence that this AI is going to say the right thing to someone, or um, how do you know it's not going to go off the rails? And I think like building out infrastructure for evaluation of these models, and especially in voice AI, it's really needed for um, this particular kind of paradigm for interacting with computers to fully go mainstream and be accepted in
Yeah.
society.
No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. Lastly, you
Yeah,
picked up your Series B.
we did.
We've spoken about some of the bets that you're going to be placing for the
Yeah.
future. Not here to necessarily discuss what's the money being spent on, but just getting some clarity on vision of the business over the next 6 to 12 months. We spoke about you need to focus on things in terms of telemetry,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
observability, compute, storage, and
Totally.
telephony was, I think, a really good example that you gave us in terms of what you're building internally. Like, if you just think about where the business will be in 6, 12 months' time, where are you placing bets on where you think you can be?
Yeah, totally. So I think that we raised our seed round initially, right? I mentioned it too, to go in, take this from being an open source project to an open source product, right? Like, in a company around it. Um, and that was like our seed round. And then we raised our A really kind of to go and build out this global network or backbone for all of these video conferencing and live streaming and early robotics teleoperation types of projects, right? And with that kind of A round, we started to see a lot of large companies in those categories running video bytes, sending a lot of data over our network. And we expanded out to, I don't know, 15 or 17 data centers. And, we're continuing that expansion of data centers all around the world so that more and more people get a great low latency experience when they use an application built on LiveKit. And then we really kind of raised this B to double down on this path that we've been on towards building like a generational AI infrastructure company. Um, I think that the world is very quickly transforming in a profound way. And we have this magical new algorithm or software or function, kind of however you want to characterize it, that is a stochastic computer, right? A probabilistic thinking machine. Not that it learns the same way as a human being, but that it can kind of think in some similar ways, right? Or has some um, common threads with how humans process and generate information. And And in order for a developer, in order for us to be able to leverage this magical technology, uh, you need to that technology has to be able to solve problems for people, right? It has to be uh, harnessed in applications. And there's a gap in the middle here where we have this magical technology and we have people that have ideas for how that technology can help society and be integrated into society and provide value. And in the middle, it's still just really hard to build those kinds of applications because you have to build a lot of just foundational things from the ground up, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes your mind away from like the focus that you had, which is the end user and the thing that they need and what you're trying to do for them. And so, this Series B for us is really about uh, filling out that middle piece for the application developer. It's making it super easy to harness this magical LLM technology that we've built. Not we as society, not LiveKit, but that folks have built, and kind of put our brick in the wall in that sense, where we're really just trying to help accelerate the value that AI can provide to the world in a positive way. And so I think like for the B, like our hope is, and we're going to try our best. There's no guarantees, but our hope is to be one of those core infrastructure companies that powers the next wave of computing, right? In the same way, I joke AIWS. If we're building the AWS or the GCP or the Azure of this next paradigm, um, then I'll be really excited about that. I mean, I'm already excited. I'm already grateful for the ride that I'm on. To be honest, like it could end tomorrow, and I'll still remember it very fondly. But I think that there's more value that LiveKit and me and the team can provide to the world, and so that's what we're going to try to do.
Russ, if it ended tomorrow, I know you'd be happy. Like, look at the energy that you've brought. I did say at the start, you'd be a gem, and honestly, you have been a gem. I want to say a massive thanks for come to join us, talk about the story, and it is some story, by the way, your own personal story, but I think also LiveKit's story is unique, fell into a really good opportunity, took it with both hands, and built so much in the right way for big players in this paradigm shift and kept on running with it. And I think you've done phenomenally well with the team. So, again, a massive thanks for coming
Oh,
to join us.
thanks, Elliot. I appreciate the opportunity and the questions and being able to talk about this. It's yeah, very very grateful for everything that's happened, and I think like my closing thought for folks is like I think with this company versus the previous ones I've worked on, it's like just try to provide value. Just try to, we're all just doing our best. Try to figure out the best way to help other people, and I think you'll find your way. At least I finally did.
You are a perfect example of do not give up. That's what I love about your stories in do not give up. And the irony in you actually building an open source project now turns into the company that maybe you wanted to go and found years and years ago when you were thinking about founding businesses. It's good to see.
Yeah. Um, I appreciate you saying that. I think in personal life, I'm sure you've heard that quote, which is to love finds you, instead of you kind of going out and trying so hard to find it. The success that we've had, this is the first time where I've really not tried to go and find it. It sort of found us or found me, and so I think that would be my advice to someone or to myself if I was doing it again. Is just try to build cool stuff for people and help folks and build value, and success will find you.
No, I love it. Honestly, it's great. For everyone listening, go and follow LiveKit. You're not going to want to miss out on these guys. Check out their projects, see where you can integrate them. Careers site is underneath as well. I'm sure Russ is going to be looking for more folks to come and join him in the team.
Oh, for sure. And if you're building with LiveKit too, hit me up anytime. I'm D for David, S for sugar, A for apple. It's just DSA on that keyboard that you won't use in 10 years. And yeah, find me on Twitter, and I'm happy to get DMs from folks if they need help, or if they're building with LiveKit and have questions, anything like that. Even if you just want to, yeah, share a story, I'm happy to
Founder
do it.
and customer support. I love it.
There you go. Yeah.
For everyone listening, likes, shares, subscribership, all that good stuff keeps this little ecosystem buzzing around, gives me an opportunity to speak to people like Russ. So keep doing it. And again, Russ, you've been a gem. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Elliot. Talk soon.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Engineers.io. It's no underscore. We've also got a website which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.